Good morning. It is early. Good morning and welcome to the Board of County Commissioners briefing. Vice Chair Sharon Myron and Commissioner Sushila Jayapal are excused. Today's meeting is a hybrid board meeting. Some presenters and guests will appear in person and some will appear virtually. For those presenting virtually, please mute your mic when not speaking. When presenting, make sure to unmute your mic and turn on your camera. For all presenters, please state your name for the record before speaking or responding to questions. Today's first briefing is on the countywide recruitment and vacancies, and we have our human resources team coming for that. Today's briefing is in response to a budget note I submitted last year to look at our vacancies, recruitment efforts, and retention issues after the pandemic, major changes in our working conditions, and changes in the labor market. As this board knows, we have made serious investments in recruitment, workplace policies, and retention, and it's important to see how those efforts are turning out. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Travis, Chris, and Jenny. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Travis Brown. I'm the Chief Human Resource Officer, he, him pronouns, and I'd like to turn it over briefly to Chris and Jenny to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. My name is Chris Len. I'm the Director of Organizational Development in Central Human Resources, and I use he, him pronouns.
Good morning. I'm Jenny O'Meara. I am the Talent Acquisition Manager at Essential HR, and I use she, her pronouns.
Thank you so much for having us today. We're following up today from the budget note that was in the 2022 budget that requests a briefing from myself and our central HR team regarding items related to open vacancies and recruitment efforts and challenges the county has been facing, and regarding also retention issues and also investments made in increased HR programs and how those are impacting our vacancies. Wanted to start out by just recognizing that the very competitive market we are in, the labor market, is no surprise to anybody. But I do also want to report that through my experience in the both the public sector and also researching private sector, the competitive labor market is across all industries and all sectors right now. The Great Resignation, you might have heard, has impacted the Portland region significantly through the COVID pandemic, especially. Multnomah County faced what was a bit of a delay in the impact of the Great Resignation in 2020 and 2021. Our resignation and retention numbers were a bit static, but then in 2022 they jumped up by almost 2%. And then so we finally felt the effects other industries and other organizations, public and private, were feeling. So we have felt that now, especially in the healthcare realm. Today we're going to go over a lot of data and a wonderful report Jenny has created, as well as want to just briefly mention some brief retention strategies we're working on currently through our bargaining and with our non-represented groups, including Local 88, the Nurses Association, and MICTA, DCA, and 701. Those labor groups have all been approved for retention incentives. That is becoming a common item in the market to help retain employees, and these incentives were paid out in two segments, one in December and the final will be in July. We've also created a non-represented compensation, total compensation tool that Laura Sampson in our HR department has created, which helps employees realize the significant benefits they have for working at Multnomah County beyond their salary. And this highlights the cost and associated benefits of such as PERS and robust healthcare and PTO program. And so we're sharing that newly with our existing and newly hired staff. I want to talk about investments in human resources programs. There's no doubt that we face incredibly unique challenges to our work in talent acquisition and recruitment, especially as a large and complex public organization. Some are great opportunities that reflect our own internal commitments to mitigating bias and advancing a diverse workforce, while other external forces brought us challenges from the pandemic and an unpredictable economy that have made our growth and development of our talent acquisition investments more important now than ever. So to help provide some background for our talent acquisition efforts in Central HR, let me hand this over to Chris Flynn, our Director of Organizational Development.
Super. Thank you, Travis. And again, good morning, Chair and Commissioners. And for the record, again, my name is Chris Len. I use he, him pronouns, and I serve as the Director of Organizational Development and Central Human Resources. It is great to be back to present our updates from this year's budget note on the state of recruitment and the impact on the county investment in our talent acquisition resources. Go to the next slide. Thanks. Just wanted to give a little bit of background. The origins of this work around our talent acquisition resources and efforts have its origins in Focus Area 5 of the WESP, where it identified the importance of restructuring and reorganizing our talent acquisition resources in central HR. Of course, what the WESP didn't tell us is that we would be striving to do all of this crucial work during a pandemic. Suffice to say, we've been thrown a few interesting challenges in our recruitment and onboarding efforts, including but not limited to the pandemic, our transition to a hybrid workforce, and also the Great Resignation. But in the past 2 years, we have gotten the chance to reimagine our talent acquisition team priorities and staffing to align with building towards an environment of and culture of safety, trust, and belonging. We've incorporated the College to County program into Central Human Resources from the Office of Diversity and Equity. And knowing that one of the leading predictors of employee tenure and productivity is an effective onboarding process, we've redesigned the talent acquisition manager position and the career development and new employee experiences positions with aspects of the work particularly influenced by the WESP. These roles take an equity approach to building new processes, training to improve the recruitment, selection, and retention strategies that bring an equity lens to our countywide programming, such as new employee welcome and our career development to support diverse staff. In the aftermath of the pandemic and the need to address some of our most critical staffing needs, the board approved our one-time only request to fund additional recruitment capacity in central HR to provide support to departments most in need. In this data report on recruitment and vacancies, which began being collected in October 2022, this information provides this report provides information we critically need as a county to navigate a truly complex labor market and bring a strategic approach to our recruitment efforts. So it is with great pleasure that I turn this presentation over to Jenny O'Meara, the county's talent acquisition manager, to go over the trends that this report has revealed and to share about the impact of our county investments in additional recruitment capacity located in central HR. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Travis. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jenny O'Meara. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Talent Acquisition Manager in Central HR. So for today, I'm going to share with you all highlights from the recruitment vacancy report that Chris was mentioning, as well as an update on the Central HR recruitment capacity pilot. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh. Thank you. Okay, so to start, we're first going to review the details of this newly created recruitment vacancy report. I do want to provide a little bit of context on how this report is different than the employment trends report presented to you all by Evaluation and Research last month. While the employment trends report provides data on hiring, promotions, and separations, it does not include any data regarding recruitment and vacancy metrics. Another difference between the two reports is that the employment trends is a look back over the last 3 fiscal years, while the recruitment and vacancy report is sent out monthly and highlights vacancy and recruitment data from the last 30 days. So this report that we're going to be going over today, the recruitment and vacancy report, is the county's first effort in centralizing recruitment and vacancy data. So where are we getting this data? This is a combination of both Workday generated reports as well as departmental HR teams reviewing data to ensure accuracy, as well as provide a count on current active recruitments. So for today, we're going to review the number of vacancies, active recruitments, and recruitments filled by month. But as you can see, the report also tracks other sets of data, including recruitments launched in the last 30 days, the number of new hires joining the organization, and applications received by month. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first set of data we will review is a snapshot on March's data that compares the number of active recruitments to the number of vacancies by department. This data is scrubbed and provided monthly by departmental HR teams. And please note that the vacancies represent regular and limited duration positions. So in this count, we're not including temporary, on-call, interns, or elected official staff. So as we take a closer look into the March numbers, you can see that there's a total of 708 vacancies and 418 active countywide recruitments. This shows a gap of 290 vacant positions to active recruitments. Like I mentioned, this is a point-in-time count of data that is provided each month. So there's a variety of different factors that could influence and impact the vacancy and active recruitment numbers that make them ebb and flow throughout the month. Some of those factors could be that the position is in the early stages of planning and the job posting has not yet gone live. A position could be going through the transfer process as described through the collective bargaining agreement. You could have one recruitment that is planned to fill multiple vacancies, or you could have a department that has high-touch recruitments or could be training new recruiters that affects recruitment capacity. Given all of these nuances, when we compare the two sets of data, in March 2023, we are actively recruiting to fill 59% of our current vacancies. So will we ever be at 100%? I don't think that that's attainable. However, with this report, we're able to start building a baseline as to what our active recruitment load is across the county and in individual departments. Next slide, please. So this is a similar set of data. However, what it does is it compares the vacancies to active recruitments over the last few months as we started collecting this data. Over the past few months, the number of vacancies has gone down, and with that, active recruitments has followed that trend. So what we can tell from this is we have held very consistently of having an active recruitment to vacancy load of between 58 and 60% steadily over the last few months. So this is the baseline that I'm alluding to that we're establishing and going to be able to continue to watch as we gather more data over time. Next slide, please. So the last set of data I wanted to share with y'all today is in regards to filled recruitments. This is a Workday generated report, so we were able to compare where we were this time last fiscal year to where we are today. So what this shows is filled competitive recruitments for regular limited duration positions by month. It includes promotions, demotions, new hires, and rehires. This won't show any position that was filled by a lateral transfer or by a direct appointment. So as you can see from this, this time in last fiscal year, we had filled 1,013 positions compared to 1,065 positions this fiscal year. So countywide, we are up 52 filled positions to where we were last year. In FY23, there were various different investments in HR to help support the recruitment efforts, and I want to give an update on one of those investments, which is the Central HR Recruitment Capacity Pilot. Next slide, please. So an investment was made in FY23 to launch a pilot in Central Human Resources to build a bench of recruitment talent to help fill the gaps between, to support the outstanding vacancy needs countywide, while operationalizing equity-informed best practices in recruitment. We received one-time only funding for 4 LDA recruiters that report to me in Central HR, but manage recruitments across various departments throughout the county. Since the pilot launched in April 2022, the pilot has managed 83 recruitments across the county. We've led recruitments in health, DCM, the Sheriff's Office, DCA, the Joint Office, DCS, DCJ, and the non-departmentals. The pilot program is helping narrow the gap between the vacancies and active recruitments, which in turn do help alleviate operational and employee morale. A function of the program is to ensure that all, as well as existing recruiters, are trained in the complexities of the civil service recruitment process while focused on applying equity equity practices that support our workforce equity strategic plan initiatives. There's a steep learning curve for recruiters at the county as our processes are complex. We navigate the space between legal requirements, our personnel rules and collective bargaining agreements, our applicant tracking system, as well as equity-informed best practices. The training we go over includes how implicit and structural biases show up throughout the recruitment processes, how to develop diverse applicant pools, and what mitigation strategies can be. With this focused training, participants in the pilot are able to gain hands-on county experience that operationalizes inclusive recruitment best practices needed to step into vacant recruiter positions in the future. In turn, this pilot helps build a county bench of talent in our HR structures. And with that, I'm also happy to report we've been very successful in our pilot thus far. Aside from helping fill the gaps in outstanding vacancy needs countywide, 2 individual recruiters from the pilot have been selected and hired into departmental recruiting positions. Next slide, please. So at this time, we would like to open it up for questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for putting this together. It's great to hear that this was the first time. It's been an opportunity to have this baseline for us to keep tracking this going forward. We'll turn it over to Commissioner Rosenbaum for any questions or comments.
I wasn't expecting that to happen quite so soon. So, thank you for the presentation. I was just going to ask, I didn't hear you talk much about retention, so. Do you have any comments about that?
I could speak to that. Some retention, we obviously started looking at the market and the dollars and cents figures of retention, and the county has done a good job of being nimble in responding to retention incentives. But largely that, I think we have at the county much more to offer than just dollars and cents to our employees. I think we have a unique opportunity to lean into why employees get into public service. And one area that I'm excited about and been talking to my superiors on about a countywide engagement process that would focus on a relook at our mission, vision, values, and to, similar to the engagement we did several years ago with the This Work Matters campaign, and I think a re-engagement and a countywide focus is something that we're looking into right now. That would be my main strategic focus and response to what our retention strategy should be. Good.
Yeah, and if I could add one more thing.
Please do.
Yeah, the other thing too, one of the benefits of doing this report run by Jenny on recruitments and vacancies is that with also the new report on the countywide employment trends, we now get to kind of crosswalk those across one another to see where the differences are. And now we can start to establish a practice of comparing the data that's going to be updated quarterly in those reports. So I think more to come in terms of recruitment and tenure, but that is something that's also tracked in the employment trends report too.
Yes, Department HR does absolutely. Yeah, we're doing as we mentioned in our last at the last board meeting regarding a recommitment to looking at higher level executives, especially managers of color, exit interviews that our esteemed Chief Diversity Officer, Joy Fowler, will be conducting those personally for higher level positions as well, in addition to the work that's currently being done by Department HR.
Great. And the only other question I have is, it looked like a pretty high number of vacancies in health. And is that typical? I know they have a lot of employees. Is there anything unusual about that? I didn't have my mic on.
Yeah, health does have a high number of vacancies. They also have a high number of recruitments that they're actively looking to fill. Their employee size is significantly larger than a lot of these other departments as well within that.
Yeah. And my previous employer was at OHSU. This was a significant issue in healthcare. There's a healthcare recruitment crisis across the region right now as well. So, but yeah, to Jenny's point, health is by far our largest department, and so they have the higher level vacancies as well.
And their numbers have gone down over the last few months as we've been tracking this.
Great. Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Stegman.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Nice to see all of you. So I had a few questions. So how do we, are we through the Great Resignation? Is it still happening? How's that impacting us now?
We're tracking. I wouldn't say no, we're through it yet. I think employee engagement is a big piece of that, and I think we have a lot to offer at Multnomah County that our competitors don't, quite frankly, especially in the private sector, and so leaning into that. So to answer your question, Commissioner Stegman, I do not feel we are out of that yet. These are annual numbers that we're looking at, but we could also track that probably closely more monthly to see, what our turnover rates and things like that are, but I would say no, we're not through that yet.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah.
No, I understand. And it seems like it makes sense to have moved the college to county to HR, and I'm just kind of wondering what better outcomes or expectations you might have by doing that, by moving it from ODE.
Yeah, so the College to County program has been incredibly successful over the last few years. The application period for this current year, this upcoming summer, closed at the beginning of April, and we have sent out all of our applications. We have received over 900 student applications this year, over 2,000 applications. So it is looking like an amazing summer this year as well. And I want to credit Cole Whitehurst for a lot of that effort.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Great. And could you just refresh our memories about what that program is and what do we, I know that we've hired many of those individuals, just kind of a general overview of it.
We love talking about that.
Yeah. What questions on that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the College to County program is a summer internship program. It's paid. Where we do some targeted outreach to individuals who wouldn't have had or historically have not had mentorship opportunities in the past. So students of color, first generational college students, low income students, and really trying to connect them to county employment, helping them learn the operations of the county as well as receiving professional development throughout the summer. So it's a great program. It's 12 years in, I want to say, and it's been 3 years within Central HR. Over that time, the numbers of participants we're over 70 positions for this year. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. When it started, we were around 30, so it has over doubled in size.
And so are you talking about how many people we've hired?
I'm sorry, that is the number of interns participating this year. I don't have the number of how many students we have hired into county positions, but we can get that to you. I don't have it off the top of my head.
But it's something that you track?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
great.
it is.
I mean, because ultimately, isn't that
Right.
what we're trying to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be interested maybe in your next report just to see what that trend is.
Sure.
I'm sure that it's good, and I know we've all had interns work in each of our offices, so it's a great program. And then, Jenny, you talked about the number between the gap of open positions or vacancies and recruitments, and you said 58 to 60%. So you're saying that is that the target then? That's a good number?
Yeah, that's kind of where we've held consistently over the last few months. It's something that we're watching as, vacancy numbers go up and down. What is our active recruitments? How does that reflect back? And are we holding that percentage and building that baseline? I feel like as we go through an annual year, when I was a recruiter, I know that there are ebbs and flows calendar-wise as far as when there are more recruitments and when it does tend to slow down. It slows down close to the holidays. So watching that and trying to continue to build that baseline on what makes sense for the county as a whole and as well as what makes sense for each department.
Great, very good. You talked about your recruiter capacity pilot. So I'm just trying to, maybe you could give me, fill in for me, the private sector versus government. And so clearly you're saying when you become a recruiter for a government entity, it's different than the private sector. And that sounds like it's much more challenging. So maybe if you could just explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so at the county, we have to follow what's called a civil service recruitment process. So it's a merit-based process. And, you may hear that it takes longer to get through those. There's a lot more defined steps to get through those processes. So for training for county recruiters, it's training them on what that process looks like so we're complying with law, as well as making sure that we're following the various different collective bargaining agreements and what recruitment looks like in those CBAs. So it's a combination of that, and then also knowing where we do have opportunities to infuse equity into our processes. So it's that balance of these are the rules, these are the requirements, and then this is also where we can make some really great strides to continue to enforce equity-based best practices in recruitment. So it's finding that flow.
That's great, and it reminds me, and I know that we use it, the Gladys McCoy
Yeah.
rule, so, which I'm pretty sure the private sector doesn't. So, and how do we compare? We all know that sometimes it feels like musical chairs of folks moving to different jurisdictions. I mean, how do we compare with City of Portland or Metro in like our hiring? Are we on par, or I don't know? It seems like we battle out between Metro and like we're just trading employees, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because we get a lot of expertise. But I was just kind of like comparatively, do you look at that other jurisdictions and compare to see how we're doing?
I don't know if we currently do that. That's a
Haven't yet.
No, we haven't yet, but that's definitely something that we can look to in the future.
there's a lot of trading going on in the market, so that is something we could look into. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really helpful. Your job's a lot harder than what may seem on the surface, so I really appreciate you talking about the challenges. I just think about the Great Resignation, and I think it's to a large degree, people I came from a family of 5. People don't have 5 kids anymore, right? I mean, they might have 1. So, I do think it's a little bit of just the natural ebb and flow and size of population.
Yeah.
And as baby boomers, we're all getting older. And so anyway, I think part of it is just the nature.
Yeah,
We are.
I think the demographics are certainly, the numbers are certainly changing, and the participation in the workforce is definitely changing, and there are different reasons for that. It's like such a complex time right now. So I appreciate you recognizing that, how that is impacting us as well.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the report out.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, I just really appreciate all the information today. It's good to see that some of the investments that have been made, especially like in terms of the pilot program, in terms of really being focused on how we can, become the employer of choice for people as they're looking at like the different options that they have to come and work, have been paying off, and we're seeing, the trending of vacancies going down over time, but actually recruitments hopefully remaining somewhat steady so that we can continue to fill that and really change that. It was interesting to look from the presentation that we had last week, looking at the different generations that were working at Multnomah County. And it's like the one area where Gen X, my generation, was actually like in the majority, because we're not in the majority at all. But that means there are fewer, Gen X workers to actually fill spaces for the boomer generation that's retiring. And so we just are waiting for the millennials to really like come in, because they actually have the numbers. So
Yeah.
come on. No, it's really, but this has been great information. And I think it's very important for us to, continue to take a look at this. And, I know I am, and the board is interested in, making sure we're doing all that we can to fill the position so that we're able to do all of the work that it's so important for the county to be doing. And, and doing what we can to make sure that we are a place where people want to be, and so I'm looking forward to working with you and your team as we look into the next fiscal year, and as we're doing that work around mission, vision, and values, and really having that countywide approach, so that when people feel like that inclusive identity, but that's also something that we can share with others who are thinking about joining our team.
Absolutely. It's an exciting, thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much for the presentation today. Really appreciate it. And we will go ahead and move on to our second and final briefing of today, which is the annual briefing to the board from the Advisory Committee on Sustainability and Innovation. Welcome. We have John W., Mara Gross, and Amanda Zuniga. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad to see you. And I'm going to turn it over first, though, to Commissioner Rosenbaum, who's going to be kicking us off today. Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. As the newly appointed Board Liaison to the Advisory Committee on Sustainability and Innovation, it's my great pleasure to welcome our guest today. Today, we will hear more about the letter that the commissioners received in March, which included broad recommendations on how to move our county toward a vision of a more equitable, healthy, and a low-carbon community where every person has what they need to thrive. So thank you to our AXI Chair, Amanda Zuniga, and the Chair Emeritus is here with us too, Mara Gross, for being here, and to the Office of Sustainability team for its support to the committee, including our Director, John Bashutinsky. So I'll turn it over to our presenters now. Take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is John Bashutinsky. I'm the Director of Sustainability here at Multnomah County, and I'm pleased to be here once again with our colleagues from the Advisory Committee for Sustainability and Innovation. These are volunteers who spend a lot of their free time, and we're very thankful for it, making recommendations to Multnomah County because they know that we take their recommendations seriously. We know, and as staff, we appreciate the fact that they give us actionable recommendations that we can carry forward and make actual progress on. So I really appreciate the brain trust that the Advisory Committee brings to the county, brings to the Office of Sustainability. They're truly thought partners and leaders throughout in the community and in this field in particular. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to get us going today.
Good morning. My name is...
Next slide, please. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Amanda Zuniga. I use she, her, and hers pronouns. I am the AXI Chair for 2023. Let's see, this is not the slide order.
Oh, so yeah, sorry.
We have a little bit of a...
We reordered the slides. So.
Yeah,
Do you want me to jump in then?
please.
So, Chair Vega Peterson, Commissioners, my name is Mara Gross, as was said. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the immediate past chair, Chair Emeritus of AXI. I just wanted to talk briefly about how we think about the opportunities for the county to make progress on the issues that we are looking at, or the sustainability and climate justice issues. And so just thinking a little bit, because the county does a lot of things, and so there are so many ways as we look at this lens of climate justice, what the opportunities are. So one is to advocate, right, that the county has a voice on regional and state issues, at the legislature on issues like utility cutoffs in this time of extreme temperatures, with regulators to reduce diesel pollution, on JPACT and transportation, and on and on. I'm just giving a few examples in each one of the instances. To research, like the study on health impacts of gas appliances, the REACH study on transportation. The county's also done health impact assessments, including on major transportation projects. The county regulates, including it's as a public health authority, and public health also includes education, like the dangers of gas stoves, wood burning, commercial and residential, the communities most impacted by the extreme weather events that are increasingly happening summer and winter. And to fund, right? The county has, fortunately, resources that for programs and projects, and integrating sustainability is an essential element into the county's own infrastructure, from libraries to planning for the resilience hubs that are excitingly moving forward. And utilizing state, federal, and local dollars. And we know that there's new federal funding from the Inflation Reduction Act, and there are resources needed to actually take advantage of those really significant dollars for climate justice. And then also funding these partnerships we know that are needed with BIPOC communities, people with disabilities, and other climate justice communities to support their work on clean energy, farms, rivers, tons of projects and programs.
Next slide, please. Before we jump into the specific recommendations, just wanted to provide a reminder that we have 4 subcommittees in AXI with the Climate and Energy Group, Transportation, Air Toxics, and Food and Water. You'll notice today 2 themes addressed throughout our presentation, the climate crisis and racial and social injustice. While we recognize the hard work and applaud the county's commitment towards racial justice in the Office of Sustainability in Multnomah County, we want to call out that we see their work to support lower adjusted utility rates for households experiencing low income. In addition to supporting this legislation, staff members have advocated throughout the rulemaking process. The county's advocacy and expertise help put in place more protection from disconnections during the pandemic. It is my belief that access to electricity is no longer a luxury but a human right. But before I begin with our specific recommendations, I do want to emphasize that AXI advocates for centering the values called for by frontline communities of climate justice: health equity, joyful human experience, and urgent action towards transformative change. AXI strives to be an inclusive and diverse advisory body, and I am so proud to volunteer among folks who bring their technical expertise, life experience, and passion to this group. We acknowledge that we are far from representing the entirety of the county, especially those who may be most impacted by environmental justice and systemic disenfranchisement. Now with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mar. Oh wait, sorry, Mar, you already got. Yep. Sorry, we'll get into our specific recommendations. Next slide, please. This is from the Climate and Clean Energy Subcommittee. So in November 2022, the Health Department report was released on the dangers of gas stoves from the Multnomah County Health Department. It's an incredibly important demonstration of the power the county has to educate and draw attention to important health issues that are overlooked, or in the case of gas stoves, deliberately obfuscated. As a follow-up to that report, we recommend that the county look for ways to further educate and warn the public about the risks of gas stoves. Renters in households experiencing low income are the most vulnerable to poor indoor air quality from gas cooktops and other sources of pollution. I want to keep in mind that the dangers of gas are not limited to cooking. Methane gas is a potent heat-trapping greenhouse gas pollutant, and when properly used, it releases carbon dioxide, which is also a climate-warming pollutant. The greenhouse gas inventory for Multnomah County makes it clear 22% of greenhouse gas emissions come from methane gas use. We use this so-called natural gas to heat water and space in our homes and offices. To address our emissions, we need to address methane gas use. We recommend the county explore options for stopping the growth of the gas system and develop programs to assist low and moderate income households to transition to low carbon sources for home heating. Doing this will reduce air pollution, improve health, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There has never been a better time to pursue these policies. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, we have been presented with an unprecedented chance to direct funds towards decarbonization activities. AXI thinks that the county needs to invest in capacity at the staff level in the fiscal year 2024 budget to take advantage of those funds, whether it's grant writing or implementation capacity, similar to the county's investment in the wood stove exchange program. Next slide, please. Our Food and Water Committee continues to emphasize the importance of these two basic elements of all life, food and water, both human and non-human perspectives. The river, watersheds, forests, and the flora and fauna that live there are imbued with rights. The specific recommendations for food echo the recommendations made last year to protect as well as create farmland and create access, especially to marginalized communities. The committee further elaborates on this point in our letter by suggesting that the board leverage the amazing investments in the Crops Farm to lease back additional land so that more farmers can incubate their businesses and utilize the farm infrastructure investments being made by the county at that site. The committee also supports expanding the culturally specific CSA, the Community Supported Agriculture Program, to more households and more culturally specific growers. Next slide, please. The county has made important investments in water quality and continues to seek ways of further funding habitat improvements on waterways impacted by county infrastructure. But continued focus is needed. The federal infrastructure laws are supporting culvert replacement, for example, and some key projects in the Beaver Creek drainage, like the Troutdale Road culvert replacement project, are well positioned for funding. But other projects, like stormwater treatment, are not part of any capital plan or program. Stormwater, which carries tire particles, among among other pollutants, has been linked significantly to coho salmon death. Treating stormwater is a key strategy for protecting threatened and endangered fish that live and spawn in streams where stormwater from county roads currently flows untreated. We recommend that the county use one-time only funding to design and construct stormwater treatment facilities. These type of capital improvements are what one-time only funds are well suited to and will pay dividends into the future. We also believe that rivers need voices, and for the Sandy River, a key advocacy has been missing since the loss of the Sandy River Watershed Council. Our recommendation is the county provides staff and one-time only cash support to help establish a watershed council for this waterway that is so important to recreation, tourism, and fish. Next slide.
I'm going to speak briefly about transportation, which is another one of our subcommittees. I'll just note that transportation continues to be the largest source of climate pollution in the county, making it a huge public health and climate issue. Our recommendation, we're renewing our recommendation from last year to prioritize funding for safety and multimodal improvements in our transportation system, including opposing freeway expansions, including on I-5. We urge the Commission to use our voice in the region to support right-sizing the Rose Quarter project, interstate bridge projects, to require health impact assessments and require health impact assessments, as a precursor to considering support for large projects like that. We also hope that funding resources like congestion pricing and road usage charges will support active transportation and public transportation, and hope the county uses its voice there as well. Next slide, I believe. We also encourage the county that the county has published data on transportation disparities, like the REACH traffic study, and encourage the county to continue to do research like that because it is so important to understand these disparities. Traffic collisions are the third leading cause of death in our county. And so with that study showing enormous disparities for Black residents in the county, continuing that is essential. And it's not just researching it, it's actually designing interventions, working with our regional partners to encourage designing those interventions. We don't just need to study it, we need to actually build safe infrastructure for people. And last on transportation, it's about continuing to use the voice to educate residents about transportation safety and options. One idea that recently came up was through the Sun Schools program. It's an opportunity for kids. We have that for active transportation, but not for public transportation yet. And so it's an opportunity to grow our education. Next slide. And this is related to our air toxics subcommittee. The county has really been a leader here, and while federal and state policy has so far failed to protect and ensure clean air for our residents. So we ask you to continue your legacy of leadership in a number of areas. One is wood smoke, which is a potent air toxic, and it disproportionately harms Black, Latina, and medically vulnerable residents. That's a mouthful to say. And so we applaud the Change Out program that exists and encourage expanding the programs that reduce wood stoves and make heat pumps available, as they're both cleaner and they also would provide cooling during our increasingly hot summer months. Expanding education and making Change Out program positions permanent, because we know that this is a long-term issue that continues. Second is air toxics regulation in commercial cooking, including wood-fired ovens. Our recommendation here is a technical advisory committee to really explore strategies. Some jurisdictions are already working on it, but also want to note the importance of understanding culturally specific restaurant needs so that it doesn't become something that is overly burdensome to restaurants that are owned by and serve culturally specific foods. Last is diesel pollution. It is an incredibly challenging environmental justice issue in the county. And the county has, and we encourage you to continue to push regulators to reduce this pollution, to make the air safer for county residents, to breathe, just to breathe. I think we're going to be okay on time, but I'll note that I will need to leave it around 11:10. If we go that long, something urgent came up, and I apologize. And I'll just close by saying that while I'm still continuing on AXI, this is probably my last presentation to the Commission. It has been an incredible honor. The county's been such a leader on so many issues that we're talking about today, and so I've loved working with our commissioner liaisons and staff, Office of Sustainability staff, And I'm really excited that you'll get to work with Amanda and other leaders moving forward.
Next slide. Thanks, Mara. Let us conclude by saying thank you. The board has taken bold stances to stand up for people's dignity, sovereignty, and rights. So many of the issues that you face as county leaders intersect with the climate crisis, often making the issues you are dealing with more complicated to solve or more urgent. Perhaps both. For example, housing and homelessness, public health, and even public safety intersect with climate and the environment. And when it comes to tackling the climate crisis, bold action is required, as is bravery. Brave leadership is the only way we can stop the climate crisis and achieve justice for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for this presentation. I know that we're going to have comments and probably some questions from the board, so I'll turn it over to Commissioner Stegman to start it off.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to see both of you. Amanda and Mara, I really enjoyed our time that we spent together. I think it was last week. So I had reached out to you because I was so impressed by the letter that you sent to the entire board that updated your committee work, and it's just, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like so far-reaching, and so many things that you all are working on was incredibly impressive. So I wanted to make sure that you knew how much I appreciated that report. And I'll just maybe call out a few of my favorite things, of like the Crops Farm. John knows that we've spent some time with Jerry Hunter. I love that picture too, of Jerry out at the Crops Farm, and hopefully we can maybe, I don't know, John, are there any updates? Can we lease additional land from McMenamins that's adjacent to the crops?
Yeah, we there certainly is some good opportunity if McMenamins is interested in doing that, and we continue to move forward with the investments that the board made. So currently we're in design and permitting for the barn and service road that will provide access to the farm. And we just recently got a shipping container out there that will temporarily serve as tool storage, and then ultimately be converted into a cool storage area for and wash pack station for food that's coming off the field and needs to be packaged and prepared for sale. So there is some, and then our partners at Mudbone are recruiting for, this will be the first season people are actually growing food out there, and we finally have water so people can grow food and wash food, do all the things that farmers need to do. So this will be the first season since we moved the farm that growing crops will actually be occurring at that location. So it's an exciting time out there, and hopefully as some of those investments start to show up on the landscape, our friends at McMenamins will be interested in partnering with us.
Great. Well, we all love the Crops Farm, and having culturally specific foods and farmers, and of course Mudbone Grown is such a great partner as well. So that's good. I'm glad to hear about that. And I know also, I think Amanda, you had talked about like the waterways, and of course there's a lot of culverts out in East County, Troutdale, where we've actually seen new or increased fish passage. So it can happen, and it is happening, unfortunately, probably too slow for our liking. I was interested in, I think you mentioned a stormwater treatment facility, and I was kind of intrigued. Do we have any idea, like, I don't even know what that entails, like, what does that cost, or like, I have no idea how to build a stormwater facility.
Yeah, it sort of, not to get too lawyerly on you, but it depends, I guess, on the facility. So sometimes I actually used to, it's my stormwater is my first love as a public servant. That's where I cut my teeth as a young bureaucrat. And so you can do end of pipe solutions, meaning that where the pipe meets the river, you can kind of back out a little bit and find ways to filter water at that location, either through natural systems like a artificial wetland, for example, or you can do interventions, in the pipe where you have more mechanical type systems that require some level of maintenance. And then you can also do to interventions in the roadway where you have bioswales, for example. So I think there'd be some level of analysis with our roads division to understand, where are the areas that there's the most stormwater entering Beaver Creek, and where we can have the greatest impact. I'm sure our roads division would have sort of a good idea of where those investments would have the most impact. We would then have to design, and really once the design process is undertaken is when you find out what the costs would look like for the actual implementation. But one bit of evidence that's come out is that there's a specific chemical in tires that's particularly toxic and lethal to coho salmon. And so that bit of information is particularly relevant here in the Northwest, where coho populations are in such steep decline. And we know for Beaver Creek is an important hatchery for coho salmon. I think 6% of all coho spawn in the Beaver Creek drainage. 6% of all coho in the Sandy spawn in the Beaver Creek drainage, which is somewhat surprising given the urbanized nature of that waterway. So it's an important waterway for fish, for sure.
Wow, that's fascinating, John. So do you think that there's some opportunity with the Inflation Reduction Act for us to get some grants, get some money?
For the culvert replacement on Troutdale Road, which is an important project both from a transportation perspective, active transit perspective, because the culvert creates a gap in the sidewalk network on Troutdale Road, and also, of course, an important linkage in opening up that waterway to fish, because the fish ladder that was installed in the 1950s is failing at this point. So some of the big federal grants, I think it's actually linked to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, has created some granting opportunities. And so we've actually, our roads division has submitted a grant to NOAA, I believe, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, for design funding for the replacement of that segment, for the replacement of that culvert. And we'll actually be traveling out there this Friday with our some staff from our congressional offices, with our government affairs office, as arranged, to take a look and just see firsthand what the issues are, what the solutions are out there. So I'm hopeful that we'll get some traction. But like you said, it's a slow moving process.
Yes. Well, that's very exciting. Thank you for that update. And then, Mara, I know you talked about traffic collision, and we know specifically out in East Multnomah County, pedestrian fatalities are much higher and completely avoidable. So I really appreciate you highlighting, I think you said traffic collision is the third leading cause of death. That's crazy. Like, people just don't think about, we hop in our cars and we go to work, but that is something that is completely preventable. And then, of course, I love that you're working on the air toxics and you have a committee for that. I know Commissioner Vega-Peterson has worked hard on, wood smoke and those issues. And then, of course, the diesel pollution. So all the work that you are doing is so wide ranging and so absolutely critical. It's kind of hard to narrow it down to just a few things because it's all so incredibly important. So, Mara, thank you so much for your time as the chair, and I'm glad that you'll be staying on because your expertise is amazing, and your commitment, and Amanda will be in great hands with you as well. So thank you all for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Stegman. Commissioner Rosenbaum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for an excellent presentation, as usual. I wanted to ask you just about tree cover for District 3, the one that I represent. That's been an ongoing concern. And is that also something that you're looking at?
Yeah, we had mentioned it in the previous year's letter, and I, encouraging the continuing importance of investing in tree canopies. We know that there's work out in East Multnomah County in areas that haven't been historically served.
Yeah, that's right. We have been implementing a program in Gresham, where there's been historically less support from the municipal government there really not any investments, unfortunately, into the urban tree canopy. And so we've gotten grant funding to support that work over the past 5 years, and we have additional year of funding. So we'll be doing another tree planting in the fall with funding from the Soil and Water Conservation District. In your district, which is primarily in the city of Portland, I know the city is planning investments via the Portland Clean Energy Fund into tree canopy, both in the public right of way managed by the Parks Department, and on private land, like in yards, for example, managed by the Bureau of Environmental Services. So I have every confidence that the city staff will be doing that, but I'm sure your leadership and your support would go a long way in helping to remind city staff that what an important task they have ahead of them. For example, in Lentz, where during the heat dome, very high temperatures were recorded, due to the lack of tree canopy.
Right, good point. I mean, it's not only an aesthetic concern, but obviously it's vital to public health now, and increasingly so as the temperatures rise.
Absolutely, and our colleagues in the health department are working with regional governments to do a regional analysis of heat islands in order to better understand where those areas, which the areas that are the hottest in the urban environment are the areas with the fewest trees, and so that's
Right.
well understood.
Right, it's clear. I didn't have any other questions, just a couple of comments. So thank you for offering these recommendations in distinct issue areas that our board and county staff can use as a resource in our policy and decision-making. Your excellent letter last month and the presentation today are obviously not the only instances where we will engage with these topics. Our county must seize opportunities to partner with others, seek state and federal funding where we can, and to build on our existing county work to achieve our climate goals. This, as you know, is an ongoing conversation, and I know we as a board want to continue moving the dial on these issues because of the many climate-related threats to our communities, which disproportionately harm Black, Indigenous, and people of color, people who experience poverty, the elderly, and unhoused people. And then finally, I want to add my voice of gratitude to all of you, but Mara Gross, who I've known for a long time, for her leadership and her service on AXI. And I know you'll continue to be involved, but we will definitely miss you at the table at every meeting. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much for kicking us off, too. And I just want to first by starting off by just appreciating the work that you have done, Mara and Amanda. Mara, thank you for your leadership role. It's been great to have the conversations with you. So before Commissioner Rosenbaum was the liaison to AXI, I had the privilege of doing that for the last 7 years. And so it's always been wonderful to work with you, Amanda. It's also been amazing to work with you, and I look forward to continuing to do that. I will say that and I want to acknowledge that there are, I think, 7 other people or so also on AXI who are meeting, who are doing this work. The way that the subcommittees have really grown and flourished and really have been able to add very specific actionable items to the reports that we receive as a board has been fantastic. And there have been so many instances where recommendations from AXI have really led to policy changes or action taken or movement on issues. And I know that that's going to continue. And one that really just jumps out in my mind is one of the recommendations from the last report around renaming the Sauvie Island Bridge. And that is action that the county is going to be taking. So in this next year, we are looking forward to that. And so I just want to, thank you for that and so many other really strong recommendations that are leading to this action. I think, in the work with AXI, you really understand the piece that connects so well, I think, with the overall mission of Multnomah County, where the people who are oftentimes the most vulnerable to issues like climate change or pollution or health impacts because of the environment are also the people who are most vulnerable in so many other situations. And so the work that the county does overall and the work that we're doing through actions that are recommended in your reports are really so closely tied. And I think the road transportation report where you were talking, Mara, about the REACH report that came out was a really great instance of that. So I have no doubt that we're going to continue to have this partnership, and just really want to thank you all for this work, the being here today, giving this presentation, and also for the really fantastic report that you had last month. So thank you all very much. I appreciate that. And with that, we fly when there's only three of us, I will say. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. That concludes our business. We will reconvene on Thursday, April 14th for our regularly scheduled board meeting. And with that, we are adjourned.